Pleased to welcome Bernard-Henri Lévy, one of the few people in the world who is known automatically by their initials, BHL. He is a writer, a philosopher, filmmaker, humanitarian. He's the author of 30 books. He is in the proud tradition of a French intellectual. He's also, he's also a writer and filmmaker who, in the tradition of Hemingway and Malraux, actually has been to the front lines and actually filmed 2 films in a place that's become very topical in the last couple of weeks in the Syrian Kurdistan. First is called Peshmerga, which premiered in Cannes, which I think now, in light of, I mean, it's an amazing movie anyway, but you must see it. And then he was back for the liberation of Mosul, and you actually literally, through Bernard's footage, see the Kurds defeating ISIS. We had planned to, and I think we will talk about the idea of America and the threat to liberal democracy, but in light of what's been going on, I feel we must start with the Kurds. We've spoken before about this. Our magazine has covered the Kurds for a long time. Bernard has been at the forefront as perhaps the most prominent advocate in the West for the Kurds for a long time. They are a people that has been betrayed for 100 years. I just would first love to hear your thoughts about how this happened and what's going on, and how serious do you think this is?
First of all, it happened twice in a short time, because what we are seeing today with the Syrian Kurds abandoned by the West, and first by, as you know, alas, by your country, by America, when Donald Trump announced that he would withdraw his 2,000 soldiers, happened already 2 years ago with the Kurds of Iraq. 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago, the Kurds of Iraq organized a referendum of autodetermination. Except Israel, the totality of the world said that it was a very bad idea. And when Turkey, the rest of Iraq, Iran, created an embargo and transformed the Iraqi Kurdistan into a jail, nobody protested, nobody came to rescue, and we had already 2 years ago the terrible image of Abrams tanks delivered by this country, America, to the Iraqi army, killing the Kurds. So it is the second time in 2 years. And now, as you know, America decided, Donald Trump said to Erdogan, good appetite, help yourself, no problem for us. You said they are terrorists, okay, you may be right, though they were, as you know, our best allies, most effective on the battlefield against ISIS. So for me, this betrayal is a terrible news for the Kurds and for the West. For the Kurds, obviously, because they are back to the mountains again. I know them rather well, as David said. I spent a pretty good number of months of my recent life embedded with them, with their elite battalions. I was the only Western testimony with a camera of the liberation of Mosul. I know how brave they are. I know how committed to the West they are. I know how fond of America they are, how much they admire America and the creed of America, and I know, therefore, how disgusting and despairing for them is this betrayal. They could not imagine the extent, really, they are not angels, the Kurds. They know how humanity works. They know how cold monsters of the state can behave. But they could not prospect, they could not figure such an incredible abandonment. Seriously. For America and for the West in general, I think it is terrible, because in any war, all wars are terrible, as you know, and I know a little also, I covered a lot, but all wars are terrible because generally you have on your hands and on your conscience, you have the blood of your enemies. This is the law of wars, and it is not an easy situation. I met so many warriors in my life who did not want to know if they killed or not, if they had actually, you know that, blood of enemy. But this time, the American administration and all the countries who followed have on their hands the blood of their friends. And this never happened. It never happened. Of course, we have some examples of Western country abandoning allies, but like in Vietnam, after a long war, after a military defeat, when there is a clear, it was not nice, the image which we know, the helicopter inside, but at least it was after years of fair or unfair, the question, battle. This time, no battle, no effort of any sort, and a sort of dark agreement with a man, Erdogan, who does not share any of the values of America, who does not know what is the American creed, what is democracy, what is human rights, etc. An agreement with him against the second single country in the area after Israel, with Israel, Kurdish people, who believes in democracy, believes in human rights, believes in feminism. The Kurds are the embodiment of the fact that Islam can be, if we support it, of course, if we encourage, can be matching, compatible with feminism, with equality between men and women. As you know, and if you come, those of you who will come Saturday at the New York Times screening of Peshmerga, you will see that. You will see battalions, mixed battalions of men and women fighting shoulder to shoulder with together against Daesh. So, this situation of dealing with Erdogan, dealing with Putin, leaving to both of them the area, telling them, it's yours, guys. Make your peace. Be peacemaker. Be big referees. And at the expense of those who look like us, who like us, who love us, and who defend our values, honestly, except in Gustave Flaubert, Salammbô, the treason of the soldiers of Mato by General Hamilcar, I never saw that. But it was in literature. Now, alas, it is in real world. And I believe that the consequences of that are only at the start of their, we only begin to see them. It will be a long, long run of consequences for the world of America. I think that even if Donald Trump tomorrow changes his mind, let's imagine that under the influence also, he decided that at the end of the day, Kurds are admirable people, marvelous people, and nobody would care, because the world today, under this administration, the world of America is worth 1 kopeck, nothing. And by the way, in the previous episode in Kirkuk, after the first weeks, when the Iraqi militias backed by Iran, when they took Kirkuk, there was an attempt of America to protest. At this time, Rex Tillerson made some protest, but nobody cared. The value of the word of a country is something very fragile. It's part of the power of a country. A great power is great by his military force, but also by his word. But the word, once you begin to break it or to corrupt it, when people no longer believe in it, very difficult to repair.
So, Bernard, I mean, this is probably in the 20th, into the 21st century, the fifth or sixth time the Kurds have been betrayed, and you're right. It's, I know our mutual friend Tom and you wrote an op-ed comparing this to Munich. In addition to being a complete strategic blunder, right? I mean, we've handed a victory to Turkey, Syria, Russia, Iran, and ISIS, 5 of our enemies, some of whom don't even like each other. I mean, you have zeroed in on the Kurds even in your last book, which was really about America. Is this recoverable? I mean, and another thing is, you know, you have been for intervention against potential genocide, going back to Bosnia. And the world is obviously, or the United States has moved away, you know, there's a reaction to that. But here was an example where we had the third allies that, you know, I mean, obviously it's a tragedy, but I think we lost maybe 10 soldiers. They lost 11,000 soldiers and 28,000 wounded. And this was an opportunity for intervention, moral intervention, and solving a real problem for us with allies. Do you see the United States, you know, that we will ever, I mean, how will we ever again intervene to keep the peace in the world or to prevent moral tragedy?
First of all, yes, I'm happy that you make allusion to our common op-ed with Tom Kaplan in the Washington Post about Munich. What we said in this op-ed is that the tragedy of this time is that it is an American Munich, alas. Till now, Munich was a European syndrome. And we have been bred, most of us, all of us, in the idea that when Europe went to Munich, America was here, more or less. It took time, but America was here. Second World War, communism, Bosnia, most of the big rendezvous of the 20th century with cold blood, with wisdom, sometimes too slowly, but America was at the rendezvous when Europe betrayed its value. Today, it is an American Munich. And this is a very specificity of the situation. And Europeans are so happy to see America being the capital of Munich that, of course, they don't protest so much, except Macron. Except Macron, who I think, I don't say that by patriotism, please make me discredit, but I say it because I know that he's one of us in this sense. He knows that all that I said, all that we know about Kurds. About the interventions, I'm not in favor of all interventions. I'm not in favor of intervention as such. For example, I was not favorable to the war in Iraq, the George Bush Jr. war. I was not. I expressed it very clearly. There is a theory of the just wars, a theory of intervention, which starts with Saint Augustine, and which ends here with Michael Walzer. There is conditions for a war, for an intervention, to be just. All the other means must have been tried. The evil which we are going to do is less important than the evil we are going to avoid. The country in which we intervene is, if not ready, at least demanding for this intervention. It is organized in clearness, meaning without lies, saying as clearly as possible what is the cause, what is the purpose, what are the targets, and so on and so on. So, for example, the war in Iraq did not fulfill these preconditions. And there is a whole theory in St. Augustine of that, of the just wars, which is very elaborated. And we know that in France, you know that in America, but sometimes the fault of those called the neocons in America, not all of them, but was not to have enough clear consciousness of these conditions. Then, when all these conditions are fulfilled, there is a duty. And this is America. America was built on the idea, on a moral idea. The building of America was not a political building. It was a moral idea. Those who built America, the passengers of the Mayflower boat ship, were inhabited by the idea that Europe was ill and that they will build a new, healthy, better Europe. America is an idea. America is a moral idea. As I say in my last book, all the founders of America, but till the beginning of the 20th century, maybe till the midst of the 20th century, were people absolutely conscious of this idea that Europe was failed, that Europe was unfaithful to its own values, and that they had to be replanted again in order to bloom and to flourish in a better way. This is America. I discovered one day, a few years ago, that you are the only country in the world who has on its bills the $1 bill. The $1 bill, which we all have in our pocket, even me since yesterday night. You have 3 Latin quotes. 3 quotes in Latin from the same poet, who is Virgil. America is this Anglo-Saxon country who has on his bills 3 quotes in Latin of Virgil. Why? Because Virgil is the man who told in the Aeneid the story of Aeneas, the man escaping from Troy in flames and going from Troy to a new ground, a new earth, to rebuild Troy. This is a story which Virgil says in the Aeneid, how a group of men behind Aeneas took the values of Troy, the little gods of Troy, did look for a new ground, found it in Italy, planted them again, and created the great Roma. So the builders of America thought that they were new Aeneas, that they were pursuing the history of the saving of Troy. Troy in flames and Troy rebuilt. For the builders of America, Troy was Europe. It was Europe which was in the 18th century in flames of intolerance, flames of wars of religion, all of that. And there was this idea to build a country based on a moral creed. So this, for me, it is the reason why I love America, because this is the reason why I am so against all this anti-Americanism, which has become a sort of faith and religion for most of the world. But it is deeply rooted in the DNA of this nation. I really believe that. Why do I say that? Because clearly you are in a bad trend. which began, by the way, before Trump. About Syria, Barack Obama did not do well at all, as you know. The red line, okay, this was not Trump. And about Europe, Barack Obama gave the start. I respect Barack Obama, but I must admit that the one who began to cut the ropes, the cords between Europe and was him. But nevertheless, even if this is a trend which began before Trump, I believe that the trend will not be stronger than the DNA. You have in this country such rooted so deeply this idea that you are not just a country, that you have no sense if this sense is not also based on interest, of course, but also on moral values, that it will come back in a way or in another. America is the only empire in history who made many mistakes, of course, but who never lost the idea that throughout its history, that power goes with values, that you cannot just be the strongest, that if you are not, this is all that we know about American Puritanism, blah, 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 but it's a fact. It's a fact. So my belief is that it will come back. It is a trend, the trend will pass.
So you're an optimist?
I am an optimist because I'm speaking of America, yes. Because I'm speaking of this New York, New Amsterdam, New Europe, the spirit of enlightenment reinvented in this land. And I really believe that this cannot die like this, because you had 2 or 3 bad administrations. Yes, the history, the greatness of a people, for France it is the same. France has this in common with America, with United States, that we are not just countries, except that we are little and you are big, but we are a little more than countries. France is not Liechtenstein. France is not Luxembourg. France is France. America is America. This peculiarity, you have not to be optimist. It is just the weight of history, the huge undercurrent of history that does that this cannot die so easily. So for this reason, I believe, and I see, honestly, I'm here since yesterday night. I met already a lot of people, a few friends here. Everybody tells me, like my friend Abraham Foxman a few minutes ago, that this abandonment, this betrayal of the Kurds is a nightmare. Impossible to understand. Abe, who is a tough guy, he knows a lot. He saw a lot about history. Himself, like me, we don't understand. So since yesterday, I only meet American ladies or gentlemen who tell me the same, more than in France. In France, the revolt against this betrayal of America by itself, the revolt against this suicide of America is less tense than here. Here I feel that there is, by the way, I spoke this morning with my friend General Barzani in Kurdistan, and I told him, my general, there is something terrible. Kurds have been never as popular as they are today in America. Neo-Christians, Jews, all Americans are with you, but alas, there is a strange guy at the head of the country.
Bernard, I was going to actually ask you, do you think that there's a possibility of sort of a counter outcome, given that until this happened, most people didn't know who the Kurds were, and now there's almost universal support for them in the United States. Could this be something that ends up creating momentum to create an independent Kurdistan and the north of Iraq, or are we just going to move on in the news cycle and forget about it?
What is sure is that for the Kurds and for all decent human beings and decent Democrats, there is no other, now the proof is done that there is no other solution for the Kurds than having a state. Look, betrayal since centuries, but this time, if they had had a state really defended, supported by, recognized by international community, having normal relationship with, this would not have happened. Though it is clear, I don't mix the things because things are incomparable, but the things being incomparable, they are in the same situation as Israel after the Holocaust. This is not Holocaust, and this is just a betrayal, but same situation. When you face such a repetition of catastrophe, you have to reach the conclusion that you have to protect yourself. You can rely on no one. This is a situation we know well, us Jews or Israelis. We know that. This idea that you can rely only on yourself, that there is no, you can have allies, but that it is fragile. Kurds are in this situation. So they are now completely decided, completely determined, they want it. When they made referendum 2 years ago, it was not a referendum which was aimed to have independence immediately. It was just a consultation. Now, they say we have to. There is no other solution. So we have to, my feeling is that my feeling is that great peoples can, as General de Gaulle said, can lose a battle, but they never lose the war. Great peoples, les grands peuples, and the Kurds, and us, and the supporters of the Kurds. We lost a battle, but we will not lose the war. The question is how long will last the war? Will it be years, decades? Hope not. Hope it will be shorter than that.
How long do you think it'll be before anyone will trust the United States again?
I'm sorry to say that. I hope I offend no one, but it will need, and it will be enough, another president. Because as I said before, the word of the current president is now worth nothing. He could be suddenly illuminated by truth. It will change nothing, alas. In the world of today, the real the geopolitics don't work only on power. It works on moral intimidation. Do the enemy believe you or does not believe you? Do we believe that you are serious when you threaten or not? And so on. The current administration is now demonetized till the end. Nothing will change. So it needs a change. It can be, I don't involve in that. It can be a Democrat, it can be a Republican. I don't care, honestly. I have my own preference. But that's not the point. For the world to stop being like a barrel of powder like it is, the world needs an America fulfilling this role based on what the Americans call the exceptionalism, the shining city upon the hill, with wisdom, with moderation, etc., but fulfilling that again. It can be Republican, it can be Democrat, but you need that. This administration, till the end, or maybe it will be another mandate, but no way. It will be deals. And today, I speak a lot, like you probably, with other allies of America in the area and in Europe. Everybody is concerned. Everybody has, and this is maybe the worst for us, for the West. Everybody understood that they are in danger. The Saudis know that they are in danger. Israel knows that the word of Donald Trump, whatever the embrace, the kisses, and so on, can be betrayed. Those Europeans, Polish, Hungarian, and so on, who did not want an European defense because they trusted the American umbrella, they begin to understand. The Polish were very important. The Polish and the Hungarian, they are still very close to Putin. They were out of his grasp, but they could go back under the boot of Putin. They did trust, in order not to do that, on Trump, on America. Now they begin to speak with Macron, with Merkel. Maybe it is not a bad idea to begin to think about a common defense. Maybe we should take care of ourselves. Everyone, all over the world, has now a lack of confidence, a lack of trust, and a growing fear about the reliability of this alliance. In Asia also.
Maybe we could open it up for questions. John.
What is the political reason, aside from mercurial Trump's personality, what is the actual, if you were forced to play devil's advocate and argue for abandoning the Kurds, I've never seen this really spelled out, aside from let's just disengage intentionally. What is the reason?
I think that Trump, all this was, and we are all very responsible because we were eyes wide shut, because all that was announced. Erdogan, in March 2018, when he took Afrin, said, I'm not going to stop. I need my territory of 500 kilometers, 30 kilometers of depth, and so on. And when Donald Trump announced the withdrawal of his 2,000 special forces in last January, I think, or last December, it was the follow-up of that. So March 2008, Erdogan, this is my plan. January, Trump, okay, my friend, you are at home. It was announced. So we are guilty not to have seen it enough. And I suppose that in the mind of this administration, there was the idea that it was agreed, that there was a deal between Turkey and America. It was after the story of the pastor, the preacher, the American preacher who was detained illegally and in such a nasty way in Turkey. So Trump fought a lot to free him, and he obtained that, of course. He attacked the currency of Turkey, he attacked the markets attacked the currency of Turkey. It was about to collapse. It needed a huge help of the Qatar, billions and billions to help the country to not to collapse completely. And my guess is that if that is your question, my guess is that at this moment there was a sort of agreement. It was probably the whole deal. We settled this question of the priest. We stop attacking your economy. You say that you want to get rid of terrorists bothering you at your border. Okay, let's put that in the. I'm sure of that.
So it's a bigger version of Iran of arms for hostages or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus the fact that your president is not so learned and does not know so much about it. So I'm sure that in his mind, the Kurds, when he said the first tweet that between the Turks and the Kurds, there is an old, unuseful, and I don't know what, old quarrel. I'm sure he believed that. The idea that it is a new quarrel between Muslim Brotherhood on one side, Erdogan, and modern Islam, pro-Israel, pro-West on the other side, did not get in his mind. He probably believes that it is a fight in a tunnel, in a dark tunnel between two tribes, probably. plus the fact that he knows Erdogan, that there has been probably a sort of personal relationship, arm wrestling, the priest, blah, blah, you know that. And the deal.
And the Kurds weren't at Normandy either, so.
Which is stupid, by the way. They were in Normandy. I am the son of 3 French. One of those French, they were not so numerous, who fought since the beginning against Nazis, shoulder to shoulder with Americans. And my father was one of the heroes of the Battle of Monte Cassino in Italy, decisive battle against Nazism. He was in the first Première Division Française Libre. In his battalion, he had there was some Jews like him. They called them at this time Juifs indigènes, which is not indigenous Jews, which was not so. But there were some Moroccans, some Arabs, and there were some Kurds. In the battalion of my father was lieutenant for the last climbing of the top of Monte Cassino. He had some Kurdish guys. So actually, it is again stupid. They were probably in Normandy, at least in Monte Cassino, which was not less easy, more easy.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I think your point that this is the beginning of a series of catastrophes that are predictable. And I wondered if you could comment on, I'll just highlight a few that I think are relevant. One is that Turkey is a member of NATO. It has bought its missile defense system from Russia. It has bought 5 nuclear energy plants from Russia, 2 of which are capable of producing nuclear fissile material. So I wondered if you could comment on the fallout of the NATO alliance and the absurdity of a NATO partner buying a missile defense system from Russia. Then Erdogan recently said that he would like to get nuclear weapons. He publicly said that.
He said what, I'm sorry?
Nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
He likes them. He already has over 50 in his country, which are only a few hours from the Syrian border presently. Do you think we'll be taking those missiles out of Turkey because they're in a hazardous, chaotic region, extremely dangerous, truly existential? At the same time as the catastrophe that we've just pointed out, Trump has talked about leaving the Open Skies Treaty, which will be extremely negative toward the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference, which could fray because our umbrella states are starting to doubt us. So those are some of the things that I see on the horizon. Can you address how we might mitigate some of these catastrophes that seem relatively predictable?
I wrote a piece 2 years ago, or 1 year and a half. I think it was published in America. You can find it easily with our friend Google. It is an emergency that Turkey leaves NATO. For all the reasons you said, you have to withdraw your 50, as you say, nuclear heads. You have to build in Jordan or anywhere another base replacing the Incirlik bases. And you cannot have in a military alliance a country who is struggling against our allies in the only battle which counts today, which is the battle against terrorism and Islamism. You cannot. It is just not possible. And this, I believe it, since, yes, I think I wrote this article 3 years ago, by the way. It was the time of the Battle of Kobane. And in Kobane, which is close to the area we are talking now, Kobane, there was documented proofs that Erdogan did let in order to fight in Kobane, some Islamists, some radical jihadists. There is images published by the biggest Turkish daily, Hürriyet, images of lorries charged with heavy weaponry and Islamist guys entering the border more or less clearly. So since this time, since the Battle of Kobané, personally, I reached the conclusion that it's finished. Turkey is no longer belonging to NATO. Or two solutions. One is expelling Turkey, the other one is destroying NATO. If we don't expel Turkey, it means that NATO is dead. Okay, we will build something else maybe, but this is the problem. About those who don't want to expel Turkey, what is their argument? What is their reason? They say, oh yes, but we are better keep Turkey, keep it inside and outside. If Turkey is inside, we can have a look, we can watch, okay? Then the question raised, what is the aim of NATO? Is the aim of NATO to watch Turkey, or is the aim of NATO to protect us against a new form of totalitarianism? Let's be serious. If the objective is to fight against a new form of totalitarianism, it is not to watch Turkey, we have to expel Turkey. It is a defeat, by the way. The day we expel Turkey, it is not a victory, because we will lose a very powerful member of the alliance built in 1955, powerful army and so on, but sometimes you'd better lose an arm than die completely. This is the point. If we don't expel Turkey, if you don't close this is NATO, the Incirlik bases, if you don't withdraw your nuclear heads, there is no longer any sort of any NATO of any sort.
Bernard, we're out of time. I just will say the Kurds have a saying that they have no friends but the mountains, but they obviously have you. And Bernard has started an organization called Justice for Kurds over a year ago when the first betrayal happened. And I think he has a lot of exciting things coming around that to take advantage of the unfortunate, but maybe, in the end, positive momentum. So you should definitely, anybody who's interested in getting involved should definitely reach out to us because we're supporters of it, and it's wonderful what you're doing. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you, my friend.